We all know it's important to stay in good physical shape, so every year we get a checkup with the doctor to make sure we're on track. But what about our finances? If you're looking to retire, it's incredibly important to have those in good shape too. That's where Phillis Sachs-Pilvinus comes in. She's been guiding her clients to and through retirement for over 30 years, making sure their retirement accounts are prepared to go the distance. It's time to retire financially fit with Phillis. Here's your host, Jen Rizak.
2 out of 3 men underestimate the life expectancy of the average 65-year-old man. Half of women underestimate the life expectancy of the average 65-year-old woman. Might not seem like a huge deal if you can't get a trivia question right on life expectancy, but I'll tell you, this can mean a big problem when you start to factor in the dollars. And Phillis will help us put the money to the math here. Plus, catastrophic illness is one of the 3 main life events that can ruin a retirement. We'll talk about how to plan for that, and we'll answer one of your questions coming up a little later on. Thanks so much for joining us this morning on Retire Financially Fit with Phillis. Phillis Sachs-Pilvinus, of course, is founder and president of PSP & Associates. She is the author of the book, Creating Calm Amidst the Storm. And I just have to mention, Phillis, there is always a storm on the horizon. And right now, it seems like a lot of those storms are coming right out of Washington with talk about taxes and changes to IRA rules, the debt ceiling. There's so much going on. There's so much turmoil and chaos and insanity. And of course, so much speculation right now also with those things. So we, it's hard to even have a definitive conversation when so much is up in the air.
Yeah, but I will say this, Jen, as you know, tax planning is huge, in my opinion, to retirement success. So this is something we always keep our finger on the pulse. And as soon as there are definitives and how it's going to impact your retirement in terms of your contributions to these retirement plans and your required minimum distributions, we will always keep you up to date on that.
Yes, for sure. So you want to stay tuned throughout the coming months as we keep our eye on this. And of course, when there is something definitive, that gives us a lot more to talk about. But it is something that we're watching and that Phillis is always here to answer questions on as well. I'll throw out the phone number, 623-792-5496 is the way to reach her if that is something that you're concerned about. And a lot of people are. They're trying to watch what's going on and trying to figure out what to do, especially when we're getting closer to the end of the year. So, Phillis, just a kind of a stressful time, really, and can feel overwhelming.
I do want to mention this. There's a lot of speculation out there that can be very scary, quite frankly. But today, a lot of what's being talked about is pure speculation. There is nothing that's absolutely permanent yet, but you can be sure that you will hear it first. You'll hear it as soon as it happens, clearly and plain for you to understand, and we'll be taking action with our clients and with you as well.
Right. And I'll just mention, when you talk about how you do follow these things, you keep your finger on the pulse. Phillis is a charter member of Ed Slott's Master Elite IRA Advisor Group. If you're not familiar with who Ed Slott is, he is a leading authority on retirement tax planning. So Phillis has a lot of great resources there when it comes to following what's going on and strategies that might be changing. And yes, there's a lot of speculation, but she's on it, and she's got a lot of folks that she's working with to help her stay on top of all of this. So certainly something that we will continue to revisit. But Phillis, on the show today, we want to talk a little bit about things like planning for longevity and catastrophic illness. I want to repeat the stats that I opened the show with. 2 out of 3 men underestimate the life expectancy of the average 65-year-old man. Half of women do the same, right? They underestimate the life expectancy of the average 65-year-old woman. It seems like a little bit of a fun fact. It just seems like trivia, how long the average person lives in retirement. But the reality is, Phyllis, we have to have a handle on this because the main source of longevity risk for your money is not understanding how long you might live. We have to face the reality there that we could live a long time.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy how often people will come in and say, well, you don't have to plan past 80, 85. And my parents didn't make it to this age or to that age. None of us know. And I can't think of anything worse short of dying than being, 80, 85 years old and, being alive and having no money. How would that feel? And by the way, I don't even think that Walmart has greeters anymore, which would probably be the only job that you're going to be able to get. So very, very scary, very important to, since we don't have a crystal ball, to make sure our money lasts as long as we last, and then perhaps some.
Right, exactly. It's one of those things that we want to have a handle on. And Phyllis, when we were talking earlier about the assumptions that people make when it comes to how long we'll live. I said that, it's 2 out of 3 men and half of women are cutting it short. They're underestimating that average life expectancy by 5 years or more. So they are probably going to live 5 or more years longer than what they think. And if you are planning on having enough money to last until you're 88 and then you live until 93 is 5 years later. Gosh, Phyllis, I think we all probably remember those days maybe when we were younger, when we felt like we were living kind of month to month and you were waiting for that next paycheck. Imagine living like that for 5 years.
That's a huge predicament.
Yeah.
An awful place to be. And I will tell you, generally speaking, that's one of the biggest reason and it's usually the widows. People are worried about, going broke, and and they're in financial devastation because they never dreamed they could live that long. And their spouse, who took great care of them, didn't realize the future tax liability on their retirement plans and the fact that they would in fact need almost as much as they both needed together. It's a big issue. So planning around that is essential.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And here's the other thing that we have to factor in, Phyllis, when we're talking about living a long time, the fact that you could be in retirement for 30 or 40 years. Phyllis, we have to talk about something that you always mention, which is having an inflation-adjusted budget, an inflation-adjusted spending plan, because even if we aren't taking all the vacations 30 years from now, when you look at what happens with the cost of things over time, it keeps going up. The costs of everything just keep getting more expensive. So we have to make sure the money will last as long as we live, and we have to factor in things like inflation.
Absolutely. Inflation never sleeps. That's why one of the key components of a retirement plan, and you don't have a retirement plan unless you have an inflation-adjusted income plan. And that income plan should be a couple of pieces of paper that you can pull out, know how much you're going to be getting, where you're going to get your raises from, where you would get money if there's a catastrophic illness, where you'll get that extra money from if you're married to one of your spouses, and how long your money is going to last. If you can't see that plain and simple, you need to pick up the phone and call us at 623-792-5496. We will make sense of your plan and put it in that format. And if there's a problem, if there's a potential problem that you could be one of those people that we're talking about today who are going to run out of money before you run out of life, let's work on that. 623-792-5496.
That number again, 623-792-5496. And Phyllis, I think we've done a good job setting up the problem. Let's talk about some of the solutions here, some of the tools we can use to make sure the money will last as long as we do, because there are things out there. It can be done. It sounds daunting and it sounds overwhelming, but it can be done if we take the time to do the plans.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You just have to approach the problem and look for the solution that fits your particular circumstances. So let me just give you some ideas. I mean, pensions you don't outlive. Mm-hmm. Make sure you take, if you're fortunate enough to have a pension, make sure you take the right option for your particular circumstances. Should you take a lump sum? Well, depending upon your circumstances, will determine that. Should you take a full survivor option for your spouse? Your circumstances will dictate that, but real important. As far as Social Security, there are so many different ways, different claiming strategies. What's the appropriate one for you? When you collect the right one, you're going to wring out every dollar and cents from Social Security, and that's a benefit again, just like the pension, other than a lump sum payout that you can't outlive. So let's maximize those. In terms of the investment dollars that you need to supplement your retirement, developing a strategy that's going to give you inflation-adjusted income that's going to last as long as you do needs to be developed. And there are different tools like perhaps the right annuity, and I say the right annuity, okay? Meaning an annuity that will give you, a payout for the rest of your life and still be available for your loved ones if you want, mm-hmm. if you have any when you die, is appropriate. An annuity will last the right one. There's all kinds of annuities out there. Some are good, some are bad, some are appropriate, some are inappropriate for you, but the right one will provide you an income for the rest of your life and still not lock up your money to an insurance company. So an annuity could be a right tool. Mm-hmm. If you don't necessarily need liquidity, another tool can be dividend producing stocks. Constant income that you'll never outlive with strong stocks. That could be a piece of it. Real estate, a good piece of real estate with a good return on your investment. All of these are options. How you put those together is very important, and that starts with an appropriate, customized income plan for you. And first, we got to understand how much you need to begin with. An inflation-adjusted income plan that's simple to understand is the way to go. And part of our Retire Fit analysis will lay that out for you. Let's get started. 623-792-5496. Make sure that you're going to live your life independently in your own terms, and that's knowing that no matter how long you live, you will not outlive your money. 623-792-5496.
That number again, 623-792-5496. 62% of all bankruptcies involve medical debt. Catastrophic illness or an accident can wipe out your retirement savings. We will talk more about that coming up next on Retire Financially Fit with Phyllis.
If you owed almost $28 trillion and you didn't have the money to pay it off, what would you need to do? Make a lot more money, right? Well, now America's debt is more than $28 trillion, and taxes are at historically low levels. It doesn't take a genius to realize taxes will probably go up. Now, think about your retirement accounts. Do you want to pay taxes on some of that money now, when rates are low, or later, when rates are much higher? Whether you should pay taxes now or in retirement depends on a lot of things. Phillis, Sachs Pilvinus, and the team at PSP & Associates know what to look for. Call 623-792-5496 to set up a visit with Phillis, Sachs Pilvinus, and the team at PSP & Associates. That's 623-792-5496. When taxes go up, will you be ready? Call now, 623-792-5496. Firm offers insurance services and may not give tax advice. Investment advisory services are offered through PSP Financial Services, LLC, an Arizona registered investment advisor.
Thanks for joining us this morning on Retire Financially Fit with Phyllis. I am Jen Rizak alongside Phyllis Sachs Pilvinus. She is founder and president of PSP & Associates. She is the author of the book, Creating Calm Amidst the Storm. And one of the storms that could be out there in your retirement, catastrophic illness. This is one of 3 life events that can absolutely ruin your retirement plan. There's a report from the American Journal of Medicine saying 62% of all bankruptcies involve medical debt. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says half of all debt collections involve medical bills. So this is serious stuff. These are big numbers here. Phyllis, how do we keep an illness or an accident, which we have no control over, from financially ruining us?
Well, I think it's got to be eyes wide open, if you will. But you got to understand the things that you could be faced with. And the blanket statement, oh, well, yeah, no, I don't have to worry about that. We retired and our company has great insurance for us. Some of it's not covered. And you don't want to find that out later on.
Right.
Or, I got Medicare. You got to understand the issue fully, because especially in retirement, you don't get a do-over. You're not going to be getting raises and getting, other jobs where you can pay these things off. What you've accumulated's got to last you. So listen, there's not one of us who doesn't understand the rising costs of healthcare. And Fidelity did a study a while ago. I think if you're a married couple age 65, between age 65 and average life expectancy around 82, it's possible just for ordinary expenses to spend over $260,000 for healthcare costs. And, that takes some planning. And it's not impossible. It's not like you've got to take my retirement chunk and take 260 and say, okay, I can never touch that. No, you build it into your income plan. You just know and create leverage on that money so that you plan for the worst and hope for the best. And we do that every day as part of our planning. We tell people when we build a retirement plan, unless you have a plan that would tell you where that money would come from for healthcare costs that are never going to happen to you, by the way. Unless you do that, you could face some financial devastation. But if you build a plan and you're aware of that, and you've allocated for that, and you've created leverage around that, you're going to have calm amidst any storm. That's our retire fit analysis. That's why if you can't say to yourself, well, here's where that money would come from, then you need to pick up the phone, because you do not have a retirement plan. And I'll say that straight up to you. And this can be financially devastating. You need to call us at 623-792-5496. And again, our Retire Fit analysis will lay out all the things that you need to consider to get to and through retirement successfully. And then based upon your goals and where you're currently at, we'll give you that comparison. We'll break it down into bite-sized pieces, and we'll show you exactly, clearly, with verifiable numbers, what's going on in your situation, so that you will see loud and clear the impact of ignoring one of these pieces of the puzzle, and whether there's an issue. And if there's an issue and you want our help, then we'll move on from there, and we'll build a plan to get you to and through retirement successfully, independently, in your own terms. But it all starts with calling us for the no obligation complimentary Retire Fit analysis, and the number to call is 623-792-5496.
Talking today with Phyllis Sachs-Pilvinus. She is founder and president of PSP and Associates. And Phyllis, when we talk a little bit about catastrophic illness or some sort of accident, here's the other thing that we have to talk about as well. When you talk about things that could potentially ruin your retirement, is the death of your spouse, which isn't a lot of fun to think about. It's difficult, but the reality is most of the time it won't be one accident that takes both of you at the same time. Your husband could be in a car accident or could have a heart attack, or something could happen to your wife. Phyllis, the reality is here, probably one spouse will go before the other. That's another important part of the planning that we do when we talk about some of these catastrophic things. It throws you into emotional turmoil, and then you've got to figure out the money side of it also. What happens to my Social Security? What happens to the pension or whatever we had? Talk a little bit about how we can deal with financially planning, which sounds cold, but we have to think about it, financially planning for the death of a spouse one day.
So yeah, I know that this is cold, but again, part of that retire fit analysis is bringing that crystal ball of doom and gloom to the table proactively, not reactively, anticipating with your numbers the reality of what would happen if something happens to one or the other.
Yeah.
Well before it happens, and we hope it never happens. But if you have a plan for the worst and you're still doing okay, if it doesn't happen, you're in much better stead. Again, you don't have a retirement plan unless you've anticipated these things. And that's exactly what our process takes you through. Mm-hmm. What will it realistically, your lifestyle, cost you if one spouse dies prematurely? I always tease people that my husband and I have an agreement,
right?
Because I know the impact of this, that I die 15 minutes before him. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. Right. And most people will tell me straight up, well, if something happens to me, I've got this retirement account for my spouse and there's a lot of money there. Well, it's not as much as you think after you take into account taxes, and taxes are going to be higher for one spouse because at a minimum, they lost, an exemption.
Right.
And we'll lay out that reality for you. The other thing is the smaller Social Security goes away. So realistically, bills do not go down. Pick up the phone and call us, and let's make sure you're on track by going through our process. 623-792-5496.
That number again, 623-792-5496. We have a little time here before the end of our show today to open up our mailbag. We do have a question from Rick in Phoenix. And Phyllis, this is something that you touched on a little bit ago, but I think this is a good question here because I think it's something that people don't always understand. Rick says he's heard estimates that healthcare costs will run around $300,000 for retirement. Just wants a little bit more explanation of that number because he says he's saved about $600,000. He worked really hard to do that. So now he's thinking, well, half of my savings goes to just healthcare. I write a big check for that. I don't see how anybody can afford to retire if just healthcare costs that much. So again, we throw out these big numbers and it's really overwhelming. But the reality is, Phyllis, we don't write a $300,000 check in one lump sum and have it all go to healthcare.
That's right. And Rick, this is a great question, and I'm sure it's on the mind of a lot of people. The reality is that if you're 65 and you're married, the $300,000 is a pretty good estimate of what it's going to cost you for things like co-pays, prescription drugs, deductibles, things of that. Over the years, that's what it could add up for, but it's over the years. Mm-hmm. And again, I will tell you, I don't know what your lifestyle is specifically, Rick, but you won't have to take half of your money and put it to the side. There's lots of different in tools that you can use to provide leverage to your money to take $1 and turn it into $3 in the event of something like this. And let's make the right decisions about how to take your Social Security so we maximize that. Let's make the right tax decision so you don't pay more than the appropriate amount for you and your circumstances. Let's make sure that you don't have more risk or too little risk for your particular circumstances. Let's make sure that you have the appropriate amount of growth on your money. Let's do all of those things. Let's make sure that you have enough income. We have a realistic budget. Let's do all of those things, and then you won't have to take your $600,000, throw $300,000 to the side, and leave it off the table. It should be part of the retirement plan, making all your money working for you, so that if something happens, bits and pieces can go towards that, and you should not face financial devastation. Of course, if you've got a budget that's well beyond what you should be spending, I'm not Houdini, Rick, but with a good, properly laid out plan based upon an appropriate income stream, that's very doable. to put you in a situation to cover these expenses, but that $300,000 is realistic. And that doesn't even include custodial care necessarily. That's why it is so important to be proactive, not reactive, and have a retirement income plan well laid out beforehand. So, Rick, if you don't have a plan, 623-792-5496, and anybody else in that situation who can't answer how they would address something like this, 623-792-5496.
That's all the time we have today on Retire Financially Fit with Phyllis. Thanks so much for joining us today, and be sure to tune in again next week for more insights from Phyllis. I'm Jen Rezac. Thanks for being here with us today. We hope you have a great week. We'll talk to you next time. Investment advisory services are offered through PSP Financial Services, LLC, an Arizona registered investment advisor. PSP Financial Services is an independent financial services firm that helps people create retirement strategies using a variety of insurance and investment products. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to safety, security, or guaranteed lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investment products. Insurance and annuity product guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. PSP Financial Services, LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. You should talk to a qualified professional before making any decisions about your personal situation. We are not affiliated with the U.S. government or any governmental agency.